Hello and welcome to EDC Issues, the show where I very occasionally jump on with some EDC issues to perhaps continue or provoke discussion about. I have two EDC issues today. I will try and tenuously link them in the middle, but it's basically a twofer. So the first EDC issue comes down to coulds and shoulds. Could Leatherman make the tail of knives sheath that has been fairly successfully proliferated on a smaller but not altogether tiny scale for the last several years? Could they do that? Well, maybe, I guess they could. I'm sure they've checked into it, whether there was IP that they had to pay homage to or pay a sort of monetary tribute to, and perhaps the answer they came back with was, nah, just make it, bro, they can't do shit. So I guess could perhaps is checked off. I'm not saying it's great, but maybe the could is correct. Should, on the other hand, should they have just announced it and said, this is our new sheath, and kind of ignored everyone saying, someone already makes this, dudes, and you're not really acknowledging it. So, bit of an interesting spin. What's the best possible Leatherman spin on this? The best possible, the way this could have happened? Well, perhaps Leatherman's secondary, perhaps one of their tertiary designers, Mark Watney, was on Mars for the last 4 years, and he got stuck there, and he didn't have any connection with the outside world, so he couldn't use Instagram and see everyone posting Leatherman and Tail of Knives, using their Tail of Knives Leatherman sheaths to carry their tool in like a cool kind of dad-like way, Perhaps Mark Watney, Leatherman designer, didn't see any of that. He spent the whole time just trying to send scant life signs back using the Mars rover, and also growing potatoes to survive until they could send the rescue mission. So that's probably the best case scenario. Then when Mark Watney got back, he said, oh, well, I'm gonna go back to my second job at Leatherman. That Mars stuff was a bit real, but I've thought of completely independently, before I've opened up any screens, this Leatherman sheath I'm gonna pencil out, you guys make this. And then they said, cool, Mark, we're just gonna make this straight away without checking it ourselves if someone already makes this, and make it. So that's probably the best way this has happened, but I'm gonna say it's probably not that way. It's probably they've said, hey, these look good, we could make these. Do we have to do anything good about this to this other, not to be all like this, but other also US little company that could perhaps have started off like we started off once. Hey, remember when we made the first plier multi-tool and how frustrating it was when that started being knocked off by other people, perhaps before our patent stuff had been done properly, and then the other companies, as soon as they possibly could, started making Leatherman-esque products as well. Remember how that frustrated us a bit? Nah, I don't at all. Let's just do this. Seems to be how it might have happened. So it's a bit of a bummer, and that's what it is. I think it just comes down to, it's just a fucking bummer, guys. Like, they probably can. It's just, they probably should have maybe done something to reach out and say, hey guys, just so you know, we can technically make this, but we thought we'd just hit you up and say, did you want to be involved? Or did you want to at least give us your blessing? Or maybe we'll charge like an extra $2 per Ainsworth leather sheath and send it on to you guys. Because you know what, if people are paying, $80 for a Leatherman sheath, they'll probably happily pay $83 for a Leatherman sheath for a little bit of royalty scratch for the person who's clearly made this. I'll put the images up. Like, that's fairly scant in terms of differences, isn't it? It's that whole meme, isn't it? Yeah. Like, it just stinks. It's a stinky thing that's happening, and it's sort of, their silence is somewhat deafening, and they probably don't know what to do. They're probably like, maybe just the one person who designed it, like, didn't tell them, and they're like, dude, what the fuck? Somebody makes this, and everyone's shitting themselves about it. Or maybe they're just doing the bigger company thing where they're just like, we can, so fuck you. So, I don't know. All I could suggest is spend like an extra $30 on the Tail of Knives one if you're sort of put out by these sorts of things, because it's not particularly to my taste. I just generally carry my Leatherman in my pocket or in a bag or something. But if this is to your taste, I feel like the right thing to do is to support the Tail of Knives one. So that's just my little thoughts on that. What do you think about it? Do you think it's like, nah, fuck it, it's big business. Business is business, I'm businessman. Captain Business says that they can just do business however they business. If that's your view, then I guess fine. But, I think there's a bit of a difference between coulds and shoulds. And I think when you're both perhaps from the same pocket of the community a little bit, maybe you should think more about the shoulds than the coulds. Anyway, that's the little first EDC issue. Let's move on to number 2. And the next EDC issue comes down to inclusion and how many titties you want with your knife content. Basically the crux of it. I was looking at Ben's Instagram and he made an interesting post, and there was an interesting discussion underneath the post about, you know, the depiction of ladies in the EDC. And Ben's comment, I feel, was likely directed upwards at the industry, not, you know, broader to the other posters. But you know what? It was on the internet and it was open for anyone to read and interpret. So here we go. But what I feel his intent was, because he relayed a story about liaising with a company about this issue, I think that was where it was going. Anyway, Ben sort of said, bit of a tip of the hat to a lady doing an EDC post that was, I think his words were feminine, but still classy. And therefore, I inferred that he had a problem with the boobs and butts and very kind of out there booth babe sort of world that often does accompany knife photography, publication, and whatnot. Ben is a man all about inclusion, and so am I. 100% agree that we need as many different types of people doing this hobby as possible. I think the best way for knives to be is like scissors. Not even a hobby, just a thing. Scissors can do whatever they want, and scissors are involved in just as many hasty stabbings in the world as knives are, really. Kitchen knives, again, ladies on Pinterest share kitchen knives, and you know, scissors and kitchen knives seem to be doing fine. There must be more we can do in the knife world to make our product like that. Ubiquitous, you know? People feel no strong way one or another about them. That's a really good way to be. Look at how the Marvel Cinematic Universe has done. 20 years ago, it was kind of embarrassing to have an encyclopedic knowledge of Marvel. Not so much now. Those movies are popular, they're household names, they are ubiquitous. And so as such, being a Marvel fan, it's a really good time to be a Marvel fan right now. You've got high quality product pouring out into cinemas. It's a good time for it. And that's where you want knives to be. Ubiquitous, not controversial in any way. And having as many in different hands does that. It's more chance of that senator going to the signing of the bill and the daughter saying, hey, I carry a knife. And don't sign that fucking bill about them not being allowed on, you know, in grocery stores, you know, whatever it is. Don't sign that. I'm normal. Stop it. Stop it. That's more likely to happen the more people have knives. And this is where this is what Ben's all about. You see it in his designs, you see it in his general nature and manner. That's what he's after. Totally understand it. Is what he is identifying as a problem a problem? Is it minimizing, you know, new people entering the field? When you enter the knife field, are you hit with just a wall of titties? And whilst to me that might sound rather pleasant, I can certainly understand how if you're perhaps a new lady entering the field, it might not be. I was thinking, how do I put myself in the minority's shoes in this instance? And I guess I'm thinking, well, I'm quite enjoying potato harvesting right now. It's a hobby that it's a budding hobby. I haven't particularly entered any potato communities just yet, but I was thinking, what if I was to enter a potato community, right? And the first salvo of visual information I got, oh, so you want to share your potatoes, do you? The fella's holding these potatoes, right? But they're holding them down here, next to his rather flatteringly photographed cock and balls in a pair of thin grey yoga pants. I'd be thinking, I would have been happy to take this photo, but if everyone's doing this photo, now I feel a bit awkward. So I guess that could be the similar, you know, the empathy, the putting myself in the shoes. That's the best I can do anyway. And yeah, that would definitely be a problem with me if I was to enter the potato world and everyone have their both figurative and literal spuds out. So, sure, I can see that there is an issue, and I guess it's just a matter of how many folks it's affecting. Ben's comments in his photo had lots of agreements and lots of people saying, yeah, it's a bit much, some of that stuff. How do I feel about it? Well, I actually quite enjoy when a homegrown, you know, person doing it completely of her volition, or perhaps for a bit of coin on the side or whatever, makes herself a little sexy knife photographing, you know, artisanal little Instagram site. I quite enjoy that as a bloke and also as a knife enthusiast. It's nice to see someone who's actually into knives, using their knives in all kinds of different ways. What I don't like particularly is that more kind of veneered, booth babe, cheesy side of it. That feels very like stuck in the 80s. It feels very...
Do you come with a car?
Oh, you.
Do you come with the car?
Oh, you.
Yeah, like that. And as such, that is where I find it just a bit disingenuous. And that's where I don't particularly agree. And I think maybe I hope, or maybe that's what Ben is hoping to affect some change in. Like the super glossy, let's just defer straight to having a clearly just a spokesmodel in a G-string holding a knife next to her butt as our salvo of information about our products. Is that a problem? I think it's somewhat of a problem. I guess if people are saying it's a problem, it could very well be a problem. But you also don't want to, whilst you're trying to include other folks, exclude the girls who are just enjoyers of knives, who like to take the sexy photos, like for example, Skylar, who weighed in on Ben's post with some interesting perspectives of her own. What's the best outcome here? How do we make everyone happy? Well, I think the best thing to do would be if the knife guys who are taking the knife photos to sell the knife things, they should just talk directly to the Skylars of the world and say, hey, you take your own knife saucy photos. Let's cut out about 6 middlemen. We can each communicate clearly about what we want. We can retain agency over our product and over our image and make a nice little agreement. So that's, I think, the best way of getting around that problem. But is it the larger problem? How are we scaring people away from this industry? What are we doing that's stopping us from becoming Big Scissor, you know? And I think that might be a slice of it, but you know what, I would wager another heavy slice that's driving people away is that most of our marketing is actually this kind of stuff. They are at saturation of people who this works on, and they have been for some time. In fact, the knife community, it's a sausage fest, it's quite a stagnant fan base, and they're kind of getting around this by just selling less of us more knives, which works to a point. But if they really want that big boom, then they might need to start perhaps seeing that this isn't for everyone. It's kind of just for the people who the tactics are already working on. What are the tactics? Well, when you've got a stationary or a stagnant or a solid market base of blokes about, looking like me, perhaps 20 years younger and 30 years older, when that's your base, what works? Why, the same things that have worked since the 80s, titties and karate. They've morphed a little bit over time, Karate's morphed into sort of like self-defense, soldier, semper fi, and titties have sort of just stayed the same, and also got the butts expansion pack sort of in the last 12 years or so. But really, not really much change has been required to continue just feeding the same fan base. I'm not saying this needs to stop, but there's a lot of folks who aren't just like me. I just find this kind of cringe. I just find this kind of, oh, hello, trouble. Ooh, that sounds cool, doesn't it? Ooh, that's kind of how I think when I see stuff like this, when I see like guys trying to sell 3-inch folding pocket knives as indispensable, Fallujah gear. That's what I just feel like that. But there's most people who aren't already in this hobby, I would wager they're not, because they see this stuff and go, lame, and just move away and just, well, that doesn't sell to me. So, yeah. And this is, again, I think Ben, you look at his knife design, it's definitely not this, is it? And that's the way I think he's trying to usher the hobby, and I completely agree with that. I just think that his little post he perhaps came across as a little bit too, I don't know. Well, I am very open about these sorts of things, and I'm all for, if you like something, then you follow it, and if you don't like it, you unfollow it. But so I'm quite happy with all of the boobies and bums, but I'm certainly all about also growing the hobby and not scaring folks away. So bit of a tricky one there, but what do you think? Do you think the butts are scaring everyone away, or do you think it's more likely to be the feeling that we're all larping around pretending we're soldiers? Because that's kind of the other image that the industry seems to put out front and center too. Anyway, those are the two EDC issues for the day. Hope you've enjoyed. Hope I've roused some spirited conversation or thought. What do you think about Leatherman's sheaths? What do you think about titties and butts? Maybe one day we'll get to the point where, enough women are in the hobby that we're putting photos next to like dudes' abs and stuff. I mean, maybe we're already kind of doing that, There's some fucking dreamboats out there. Maybe Metal Complex is just a slight spike in his female-centric analytics from doing a shirtless episode. Who knows? Let's stay tuned to that just in case, and we'll get around to it, I guess. All right, see you in the next video. Bye-bye.